When I was in third grade, my parents moved to a new town. But not only did they move to a new town, they moved to a new town in the middle of the school year. So moving to a new town in third grade is hard. Moving to a new town in the middle of the school year is really hard. Moving to a new town in the middle of the school year in third grade, when you have buck teeth, braces, thick brown glasses, and awkwardly curly hair, is impossible. Yet I walked into it with a level of optimism because it was a new beginning. I got to start over. I got a clean slate. Maybe these new kids wouldn't see the same thing that the kids in my old school saw. And for those of you in the back, you can get a better look. So I showed up at school, and like a trooper, I was walked in front of the class, and I was introduced as the new kid, and I was put down in the middle of the sea of all these kids, all these complete strangers that I didn't know, that I'd never met. And I was there to fend for myself. I didn't know anybody. I was scared. And so, fast forward a couple of hours, I'm at lunch, and I'm sitting in the playground, and the most popular girl in our class comes walking up to me. And just to give you an idea of how naive I am, I'm thinking, this is great. Like, this is my chance. I get to change everything right now. I'm going to be one of the popular kids. And so she introduced herself by walking up to me with a big smile on her face, and she said, "Hi, you're pretty." And before I could comprehend the verbal punch in the face I was about to get, she completed the sentence, "Pretty ugly." And she walked away. High-fiving all of her friends, they're laughing, and the whole group of kids walking away celebrating that they had just completely broken me down. I turned around, and there was nobody there. I didn't know anybody. There was nobody there to tell me that she does this to all the kids. There's nobody there to tell me that she was a bitch. There's nobody there to tell me that she was wrong. And so it must be true, right? Because that's what we do. And so I assumed this identity called Pretty Ugly. And for the next 30 years, I was afraid of rejection. I was alone. I felt depressed. I was introverted, low self-esteem, shy. I hated myself. Hated myself because of this stupid little comment that this girl had made. An 8-year-old had held me back from, a 20, 30-year-old man, from my career, from who I was. She dictated how I was going to live my life. And this story played in my head over and over and over again. Pretty ugly, pretty ugly. Every time I had a chance to step outside my comfort zone, pretty ugly. And that became my motto. It became who I was. It was my identity for 30 years. And it wasn't until a couple years ago that I went to a personal development seminar. And the idea was, I got things that are wrong. We all have things that are wrong with us, and I wanted to fix something. I didn't know what it was. Like, I didn't actively walk around saying, "Oh, I'm pretty ugly." Like, I just had this story. There was something in there that had me look at somebody, and they could look at me with a blank look on their face, and I would instantly go, "I wonder why they hate me." And I didn't know why. And so I go to this personal development workshop, and we're paired up with a complete stranger, and I'm telling this girl my story. And this is the first time the words ever left my mouth. I'd never spoken about this story to anybody. Not my parents, not my teacher, not the principal, not my wife, nobody. And so I'm telling this complete stranger my story about Pretty Ugly. And as I'm telling her, I can see her start to smile. So I was like, that's kind of rude. And so she's by the end of this thing, she is lit up like a Christmas tree. And now I'm like inside, it's just making everything that I feel that much worse, like, 'cause it must be true, like, it's true. Here's, I'm telling another person the story, I'm being vulnerable, I'm giving this to somebody, and she's laughing at me, and I had to say something. I was like, you have no idea, I know it sounds ridiculous, but you don't understand how much this hurts, and you're laughing at me. And she said, I'm not laughing at you. And she proceeded to tell me her story. Now, her story was, she was a very bubbly, very happy, very, light and airy, easy breezy kid growing up. And so her dad, in the most loving way possible, meaning no harm, nicknamed her Ditz. And it was just a cute little nickname because she was just this bubbly personality. And he meant well by it. And she spent her entire life thinking she was stupid because of it. She wasn't bullied. She assumed this personality because of something that somebody else said, that she created this story and turned it into something else. And she told me this story, broke down, and that was the first time, that was the day that I began to heal. That moment, I said, wow, like, I'm not alone in this. I always thought I was alone. I always thought that I was carrying this thing, and it was just me. And so, over the next couple of months, I started looking at this, and I started picking it apart and figuring it out and making it better. And I realized that I don't have to be this person anymore, and so I started to heal. And then at one point, I had drummed up the courage to write about it on my blog. And so I wrote a story called Pretty Ugly, and I outed myself, told the story, exactly what happened, what it meant to me, what it did to me. I lost 30 years of my life, and how I didn't lose 30 years of my life at the hand of this 8-year-old. She was just being a stupid kid. I lost 30 years of my life at my own, at the hands of what I had done. I created this story. And so I wrote this story about it being very vulnerable. And within a couple of weeks, I had received nearly 100 stories from people all over the world. Stories that told their truth, that this is what I was called, or this is what I believed, or this is who I thought I was. And they were all completely different, but they were all exactly the same. Sometimes it was a teacher, sometimes it was another student, sometimes it was a parent, sometimes it was a nickname, sometimes it was something violent, sometimes it was when they were young, sometimes it was when they were old. Like, those were just semantics. It was all the same story over and over again. Something happened, they turned it into something else, and then assumed that identity, and it started affecting changes that they made in their life. So as I started, realizing this and thinking about this, I realized that I wasn't alone, and so I started picking out and reaching out to people and talking to people to find out what their pretty ugly story was. And I didn't want it to end with me. Like, it couldn't end with me. Like at first it was therapeutic for me to read these and to connect with all these folks. But better than that would be, how do we bring this to the public? How do we take today's youth and make them understand that they don't have to live under these assumptions of who they are based on what somebody else said or the stories that are going on in their head? How can they break this chain and be who they're meant to be and not who somebody else dictated them to be? And so that became my mission. How can I do this? How can I turn this into something? And so I started collecting these stories, and my goal is is now the Pretty Ugly Project. And what I want to do with this is I want to take these stories, these empowering stories, not these depressing stories of, hey, this is who I thought I was. It's these empowering stories of, this is who I thought I was, and this is how I overcame it. So we can teach our kids that they don't have to live this way. And so I'm putting together a book of all these stories. And my goal is within 1 year to donate 10,000 books to libraries all over, and libraries and schools all over the country, to have a website that kids can get the resources that they need to realize that they're not alone. An anonymous place for them to leave their story, for them to tell their truth and get it out of their system and know that they're not alone. Because what this looks like, for me, was depression. It was being alone, it was being introverted, it was not being as successful in my career as I could have been. It was, having a hard time meeting girls when I was in high school and everybody else was dating. It turned into all those things. For other kids, it looks like depression. It looks like suicide. And things that you know, as adults we look at and say, my God, why would somebody who's 12 commit suicide? Or even consider committing suicide? But this is why. Because we have these programs that talk about getting rid of bullies. We're going to treat the bully problem from the bully. And we're going to get rid of it. We're going to you know, educate our bullies and get them to stop. We're going to punish the bullies and get them to stop. But nobody is talking to the kid that was bullied, the aftermath of what had happened, the stories that they created, the problems that are caused by the damage that you've now stopped, but you haven't treated the result of that. And so that's what we plan on doing with the Pretty Ugly Project. And so my challenge to you, because we all have a story, is to go to theprettyuglyproject.com, share your story with us, and let's see if we can change this. Thank you very much.